In 2023, I thought I had finally reached my breaking point. My husband of 10 years, whom I had been with since sophomore year of high school, crossed yet another boundary. We had two beautiful kids together, a history that stretched back over half our lives and a foundation built on shared dreams. But over the years, those dreams had cracked and crumbled under the weight of infidelity, lies, and emotional turmoil. This time, it wasn't just online escapades or flirtations that came to light. It was a series of text messages between him and a close friend's wife discussing the sexual tension between them. The messages were forwarded to me by his good friend, and as I read them, something inside me shifted. I knew I needed out. Our marriage had been through so many ups and downs that I'd lost count. This wasn't even the first time I had tried to leave him. Over the years, I'd caught him seeking out women online, making profiles on dating apps, and generally disrespecting the vows we made at 21. I'd tried to rationalize it for the kids' sake. I'd told myself that people change and grow. But when I filed for divorce this time, I thought it would finally stick. At first, he refused to sign the papers. For 3 months, he bombarded me with lengthy text messages and love letters, sent to both my phone and my work email. He professed his undying love for me, apologized profusely for everything he'd done, and begged for another chance. But I was done listening. Or so I thought. While he was busy trying to win me back, I entered a situationship with someone else. It wasn't serious, at least not to me. Meanwhile, he'd started a relationship with a woman he met on Tinder. When he told me about her, he made a point of emphasizing that she was a tatted-up stripper. I didn't care about his new relationship. In fact, I was relieved that he'd found someone else to focus on. But the way he spoke about her, with a mix of pride and derision, rubbed me the wrong way. I later learned more about her. She'd been a stripper and a drug addict for years, and when she and I finally got in contact, she confirmed that he had fed her a narrative about me being a psycho ex to justify her refusal to communicate with me about my children. The audacity of it all was almost laughable. Years before, after the birth of our second child, we had agreed to get fixed. I went through with the procedure, but he always had an excuse to miss his vasectomy appointments. When I brought this up during our separation, he brushed it off, but I couldn't shake the feeling that his reluctance was deliberate. Despite his claims that he didn't want more kids, his new girlfriend got pregnant within 2 months of their on-again, off-again relationship. I'd warned him this might happen, but he dismissed me, insisting he'd been careful. By the time their child was born, she had moved to another state and I had moved with our kids as well. The distance between all of us added a layer of complexity to an already tangled web. Throughout the separation, our oldest child struggled the most. They had a deep bond with their dad, and seeing him move on with someone else was heartbreaking. When I decided to let him move back in, it wasn't just for me. It was for them. I didn't want my children to grow up without a present father, even if my faith in him was shattered. While the love letters initially annoyed me, I couldn't ignore the nostalgia they brought with them. He wrote about our high school years, our first date, and the time we spent building our life together. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to remember the man I fell in love with before everything went wrong. After months of therapy and cautious optimism, we tried to rebuild our marriage. At first, it felt like a dream. He was sober, attentive, and eager to provide for our family. He encouraged me to be a stay-at-home mom, something I'd never been able to do as the primary breadwinner. For a while, I believed we could find happiness again. But the cracks began to show. His ongoing legal battle to avoid child support for his second child weighed heavily on both of us. Despite my suggestions that we move closer to the baby and work out a co-parenting arrangement, he refused. "I want nothing to do with her," he said flatly. "If the baby's mine, I'll sign over my rights." I was stunned. How could he be so callous about his own child? Now, months into our renewed marriage, I find myself longing for the peace I had during our separation. I love my children more than anything, and seeing them happy with their dad fills me with a bittersweet joy. But I can't shake the feeling that I'm betraying myself by staying. Some nights, I lie awake thinking about the life I almost had. Before our first child, I had plans to move to Thailand and start anew. That dream feels like a distant memory now, overshadowed by years of compromise and sacrifice. I don't know how to mend this marriage. The wounds run too deep, and the trust is beyond repair. But for now, I'll stay. Not for him, but for my kids. Maybe one day, when they're older and more resilient, I'll find the courage to choose myself again. Until then, I'll keep going, one day at a time. If you're reading this and wondering how to navigate a similar situation, I don't have all the answers. But I do know this: you can't pour from an empty cup. Take care of yourself first, even if it means making hard decisions. Life is too short to live for anyone else but yourself.